You are listening to the Weird Cousins podcast, a podcast that focuses in South Texas and northeastern Mexico genealogy. Oh, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Weird Cousins podcast. I know it's been a while since we have had an episode, and I'm glad to tell you all that we have Wellester Alvarado with us today, like usual. Wellester, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, except for this 95 to 105 degree weather that we're having in this fabulous city. But other than that, I'm doing fantastic. Nice to be here.
For those of you that do not know, Wellester is visiting as, he lives around the Monterrey, Nuevo León area.
It's the city of Guadalupe.
Great. And I'm in Mission, Texas, so we are being scorched by the heat this summer. It's very hot. Yesterday at the ranch, it was 109, 111. So you can just imagine. So if you're in a cold, cool place, great. Stay there.
Don't complain.
Anyways, let's stop talking about the weather and let's get to this episode. And while trying to come up ideas on what to talk about, I messaged Wellester, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And like always, he said yes. And I asked him, well, any ideas? And he mentioned, let's talk about DNA. So that's what we're going to talk about today, DNA. If you're new to DNA, great. This is going to be perfect for you. If you're more advanced, great for you. But it never hurts to learn a little bit more or have different perspectives. And today we're going to be talking about the 3 DNA testing companies. Now there are 4, but I like to talk about these 3 ones because those are the ones that I've used and tested with. I'm going to talk about the 3 different DNA tests and then provide you some tools and resources so you can make heads or tails out of your DNA results. So, Wellester, why did you want to why did you want to discuss DNA today?
Because here, like you mentioned, I'm in fabulous Monterrey, and 2 minutes away is Guadalupe. But here, there was a question about whether the Jewish people, the crypto Jews that came here, whether they had DNA that they left here from their families, and people started to do DNA tests here and to verify that they did have some Sephardic Jewish blood in them. But then a question came up, and someone asked me, but what about if I was adopted? Not that person. What if somebody in my past history, in the generations past, they were adopted and they took the name that I'm using today and my family has been using for the last 6-7 generations? And I said, interesting, but the DNA test here will tell you, at least you can find out where that name ended up and where it came from. And there are protocols and different information that you can find, and it's research. You can find where you were adopted from. A lot of times your brother, he passed away and he left his children with you back in those days. And then, or a distant cousin did the same thing. And even though you didn't have the last name, you know who they were because they did some protocols, and that way you can find out. So the DNA it's not 100%, but it's as close to 100% as you're going to get. And it's a good tool to use if you can pay for it. In some cases, some universities do it for free. Arizona State University used to. I don't know if they still do, but they have a genealogy and a DNA sector in their school. Anyway, so that's some of the stuff that interested me in it, and there's a lot of ways that you can use it. There's library information that people that have already done DNA tests, you can see the results, and sometimes you can call them or get a hold of them somehow, and sometimes their DNA information is already in public areas in the internet.
Okay, so before we get into those more deep topics, I'm going to talk about the different DNA tests that are available, the companies, and some resources, and then we'll talk about, if you're adopted or strategies to use. So let's talk about the three different DNA tests that are available. There's one that's called the autosomal DNA, and it's abbreviated ATDNA. And that particular DNA test looks at the DNA for all of your ancestors for the past 6 generations. And for us in northeastern Mexico, the intermarriage between parientes, you're gonna be getting DNA that's even further back. Now, another DNA test that's available is a mitochondrial DNA, and that's abbreviated mtDNA, and it's passed down from the mother to all her children. Both male and female get it. So I'm a male. If I do my mtDNA test, I'm gonna be able to find out when my mother's mtDNA test, and that's only females. Well, it's only passed down from the female, from the mother to all her children. Then we have the Y DNA, which is the Y chromosomal DNA, and it's abbreviated Y DNA, and it's passed down from father to son. So females will not be able to take this test. If you're a female and you want to find out the Y DNA of your father or your grandfather, you're going to have to find a close male relative to test that's actually a direct descendant of that particular person. Now, I like to talk about the three major testing companies, and those are Ancestry DNA, Family Tree DNA, and 23andMe. And now another one that has emerged in the last few years is MyHeritage, but I haven't really used it, so I'm not going to be talking about them. Now, Ancestry DNA offers only the ATDNA, which is the autosomal, the one that looks at your ancestors for the past 6 generations. But the extensive member family trees make them one of the leaders in the area, and I think they're the ones that have tested the most people out there. So if you test with Ancestry DNA, you're gonna get access to their not access to their huge database, but your DNA is gonna be matched with a lot more people. And then the other company that's available is Family Tree DNA, and Family Tree DNA offers the autosomal DNA, which is the ATDNA, and they call it the Family Finder, again because it tests all your ancestors. Now they have the mtDNA, which is the mitochondrial, and that's only to test the DNA that's passed down from the mother to all her children. And then we have the Y DNA test, and that's only for males, and it's a test or looks for the DNA that has been passed down male to male to male for generations. And then we have 23andMe. 23andMe only offers one test, but you get information on your ATDNA, your mtDNA, and your Y DNA. You get the autosomal information, which is all your ancestors, but they also provide you the haplogroup that your mtDNA belongs to, and also the haplogroup that your Y DNA belongs to. And like I like to tell people, each company has a different purpose. They may compete to sell kits against each other, but each one provides different things and things that the others don't provide. So what I did, I tested with all of them to be able to be on all those platforms and to be able to match with more distant cousins and try and figure out more about my own ancestry and distant cousins. So what I recommend, if you're on a tight budget, just wait for a holiday and go to Ancestry DNA, test with them, and then you could actually download that DNA from them and transfer to Family Tree DNA. But but the only thing, I think Family Tree DNA at this time and point is not accepting Ancestry DNA kits. And in the past it was different. They would accept them. Now they don't. In the future, I'm pretty sure they will accept them. And the way I have understood is that they changed the testing equipment, so they're not compatible between these companies. And then 23andMe, you could download your raw data from all these companies. You could download the raw data, but you cannot transfer it between them. The only one that would accept it was Family Tree DNA. And then 23andMe, they let you download the raw data, and you may be saying, well, what's raw data? Why is that important? And I'll be talking more about that once we get to the tools. And the tools, GEDmatch is one of the major tools where you download the raw data from any of the testing companies. You go to GEDmatch, create an account, you upload that raw data, and you're gonna be able to match with like thousands and thousands of people that have uploaded the raw data to GEDmatch. GEDmatch is a free service. They do have paid features if you wanna analyze your DNA with their premium tools. Well, then they'll charge a little monthly fee, but everything else it's free, and I highly recommend. If you've tested your DNA already, go to GEDmatch, upload it there, and you're gonna be able to match with, even with me. If you see somebody there that comes out in the results that has a WAC in parentheses after their name, that means they're a Weird Cousins member on Facebook. So you could just go to Facebook and join our Weird Cousins group and send them a message there, a private message. Now, for tools and resources, I only have GEDmatch and I have YouTube videos. Go to YouTube. I'm not going to tell you specific videos, but there's a lot of DNA videos there about ancestry, from Ancestry, from Family Tree DNA, from 23andMe, and from individuals that specialize in DNA research, and even individuals that will break down the tools and how to use those tools. So I highly recommend go to YouTube and search DNA tools, DNA test, or type in the particular DNA company or the particular DNA test to learn more about them. And before we get to more deep topics, let me tell you about two books that I really like. And my favorite one is called Finding Family, My Search for Roots and Secrets in My DNA. And that's by Richard Hill. Richard Hill has been a presenter in past Weird Cousins conferences. So he's a friend of Weird Cousins. So Richard was the first adoptee to find his biological family using DNA research. In his book, Finding Family, My Research for Roots and the Secrets in My DNA, you're gonna read the saga that he went through and all the efforts and all the trials that he had to overcome to be able to find his family. So it's an excellent book, and if you're an adoptee, I highly recommend buy it. And also connect with Richard. He's in social media. I think he's a member of the Weird Cousins Facebook group too. If not, just search for him or Google him, and you will find his website and connect with him. Now, another book that's one of my favorites when it comes to DNA, it's called The Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy. And that one is by Blaine T. Bettinger, who's one of the leading experts in DNA research, or genetic genealogy DNA research. And the concept that I really like that he provides in that book, and it makes total sense, he mentions and explains how we have two family trees. We have the paper trail family tree, and then we have our DNA family tree. And those, hopefully they do match, right? But many times they do not match. And we come back to what Wellister was saying, that somebody was adopted 6 generations back, and now without knowing what the paternal surname was, now those descendants are, let's say, a Garza or a Gonzalez or a Treviño or a Montemayor. So I already talked to you about the 3 different DNA tests that are available for you, the 3 major DNA testing companies, and some tools and resources to help you further your DNA knowledge. Also, I want to mention that on Weird Cousins on Facebook, we do have a Facebook group just specifically for DNA for the Weird Cousins community. And let me just find the name of that book so I don't give you the runarounds. And it's called Weird Cousins DNA and Jet Match Research. And you're more than welcome to go join. Ask your questions about DNA there, share your experiences. It's just a community to help each other out and to learn more. So if you don't know something, just ask there. And we do not allow DNA questions in the main Weird Cousins group because years ago it became a real problem that all you would see there was just DNA questions and basically no real genealogy. So that's why we did the decision of creating two groups. And now back to Wellister. Wellister, do we talk about adoptees first?
Yeah, that's a because not only adoptions, but that back in those days, they used to take on the last name that had more money or more positions in life, or businesses or something like that. So that also affects the DNA quest. So yeah, let's talk about both of those right now. That's an interesting
And
question.
now that you brought up, it brings me back to my early Mexico settlers research project that I'm doing, where I get this limpieza de sangre documents, and it says, for example, Wellister Alvarado, but then the father is, let's say, Moises Garza, and then the mom is like Sofia Lopez, and then her father is not even a Lopez; it's another, or she could be an Alvarado. So then Wellister decided to grab the surname of that particular grandparent, either maybe because he grew up around them and respects them, or maybe because that's the surname that will get him more advancement within the Spanish colonial community. So, we really don't know the reasons that they would choose those surnames. But when it comes to DNA, you're like, oh man, I'm a Garza, but then you go ahead and test, and you don't even have the Garza DNA.
Right.
And even the Garzas, if rumors are true, because it's Marcos Alonso de la Garza, and people say that Alonso was the father's surname and de la Garza was the mother's surname. So we're saying the Garza DNA when in reality, that's Alonso DNA. Well, that's if that's rumor true of who the parents were, right? But I haven't found any documented proof. But that's just an example. Another example I have in Cerralvo with my Lopez line, and his marriage record says hijo de crianza. So crianza meaning like, was he raised by? Was the guy or the person that's listed as a father, was he an uncle? Was he really a Lopez, or was he or given the surname Lopez?
All those questions are actually good because they're accurate. There's no way of telling that they raised him, that's for sure, but that they raised him because he was my brother's child, or he was an adopted, or someone left him with me, or his parents died and I took him in. There's all those questions. You're absolutely right on that.
But if you're an adoptee, recent adoptee, right? You do not know who your biological family is, and you're searching for them. I highly recommend connect with Richard Hill to help you out, provide you some guidance. Also, what I recommend, test with every single DNA company that you can, because you never know where somebody that's biologically related to you has tested with. And
True.
And if you get distant cousins, if I come up as a distant cousins, or Wellister or somebody else as a distant cousin, connect with us, and we'll try and, or at least in my case, I'll try and provide you with my family tree to try and help you out.
Very true. I actually, through We Are Cousins, I've actually come across three Alvarados, and one in Bustamante, two in Allende, and there's another one that I'm looking for right now, but they haven't answered me. And two of them are from here, and one of them is from Texas. So yeah, it's a good way.
And you know, when it goes further back, and I know Crispin Rendon is doing research on this, where he publishes or tries to get two people that descend from the same ancestor. You know, and sometimes the DNA doesn't match, but the paperwork is there. So that means just that somewhere down the line there was an affair, either a rape or maybe just a love out of wedlock, and they were not able to get married or whatever, but a child was produced.
We also have to take into consideration in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, there were slaves. And those slaves, not always, but sometimes, when they married, the owner, el amo, as they say, would give them his last name as to to legitimize them. And it was an honor for the slaves back in those days to let their owner let them use their last name, because they didn't have a last name before that. So that happened a lot in the northwest, northeast part of Mexico. I've seen a lot of cases of that. You have a mulatto family that has the last name of Montemayor, or you have the Coyotes, which is all the different mixes, the castes. They all have last names that they didn't have last names up until like maybe the 1600s, and there's no information about them before that because they didn't have last names. And that's also something that you have to look for in protocols and in information that you'll find that's not genealogy based, probably property wise, or maybe they were arrested, or they did something legally and they had to write some documents up, and that's where that information shows up.
And since you were talking about Native American DNA, um, you know, and my DNA, 30% of it is Native American. Now, who were they? A lot of them I have no idea who they are, but I've been able to identify a lot of them on my family tree paper wise, because I'm following the lines going back, and then eventually I come to a marriage where it says that there were Indios, Native Americans.
No, but that's a little confusing as well, because back in the 15, 16, 1700s, there was no American Indian. There was all, it was all part of Mexico. And since there were no borders, the Indians didn't realize that they were traveling in Mexico, living in Mexico. They were nomads. So they really didn't have a particular area. And sometimes that's a little misleading, thinking that, it might be Navajo, because the Yaquis, those are all over Mexico, northern Mexico. The Apaches, the same thing. A lot of those Indians that we saw in the TV movies, the Cowboys and Indians, they were in the U.S. fighting the soldiers, but they were from Mexico. There were a lot of tribes that nomads. Uh, so that's a tricky one. You can't say 100% that they're North American Indians, because they didn't exist.
Let me make it clear. When I say Native American, I'm referring that they're native to Mexico and native to the U.S. I'm not just saying that they're American, say, current American Indians. But northeastern Mexico, the only outsider native or outside tribes, or let's say indigenous, so we don't get confused. The outside indigenous tribes or for the area of northeastern Mexico, where the Tlaxcaltecans were basically the only outside Indian tribe. I say tribe, but they were actually their own civilization, right?
Well, the Zacatecas also, but mostly Tlaxcaltecas.
Tlaxcaltecans, and I mention them because there's so much documentation about them, how they helped the Spanish settle this area, right? So, and we do even have Native American in northeastern Mexico, and now I'm referring to American Indians because Apache used to do a lot of raids into northeastern Mexico, and Comanches. Well, there's some case about the Comanches, but I'm not sure if they were like confusing them. But for the Apaches, yes, Los Aldamas, Doctor Cos, China, Nuevo Leon, those areas were, some towns within those areas were decimated, where they killed all the men and would take the women and children. So there's documented cases of that. So we do have some of those tribes within our, I guess, genetic indigenous mix that we have. Now, my mom's maternal DNA, the mtDNA, it's Native American. Now, my father's Y DNA, it's Spanish. Or European, not Spanish, but European, right? So we're a mixture of everything, and I've told Welles and I've told everybody when I do a DNA presentation, if you look at our DNA, the color coding, we have a rainbow.
Yes.
And that means we have a bunch of ethnicities, races. And Richard Hill has a presentation where he shows the DNA of Chinese, of an Asian person, where it's all one color, and then a true Anglo, which is one color, and then he shows other ethnicities and they're all colors, and then he shows the Hispanics, what we're considered as Mexicanos, and we're a rainbow, because the Spanish used to conquer territories, and their goal was not to kill everybody. Their goal was just to marry into the population and conquer them, because that was the fastest way to conquer a population. Go there, true. Conquer with the arms, and then to really solidify that conquest, marry with a population.
That's right. There's also one that a lot of people don't even realize: Filipino. Spanish people used to, the Spanish Armada was in the Philippines, and they were doing commerce from Mexico to the Philippines and Mexico. As a matter of fact, that dress that the young girls wear with all the sequins, that sequence design comes from the Philippines. And so not a lot of blood, but there's down south, there is some mixture of the Philippine, the indigenous.
Baltasar Castaño de Sosa, you know who he is?
Yeah. Yes.
Bueno, Captain Baltasar Juan Castaño de Sosa was with Luis de Carvajal in the settling of Monterrey, right? Then Carvajal gets arrested, and Baltasar Castaño de Sosa does an unauthorized expedition into what is now New Mexico. So then they send another captain to apprehend him because he had no permission from the viceroy to do that expedition. So he gets arrested and he gets exiled to the Philippines, and that's where he actually died over there. So that's just a little side note.
Yeah, but and that's where the tutti frutti, the rainbow color spectrum of the DNA of Mexico. I mean, we have to remember that, for example, in El Paso and Juarez, you have the Raramuri or the Tarahumara Indians that were on both sides of the border when there was no border. So you've got all those people with that blood mixed in with Spanish blood.
And another thing, we do have slave blood running through us, or at least in my case I do. It only shows about 3%. and it's African. And I actually found an ancestor that says that he was the faithful servant of so and so.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I have ancestors that they were the slavers and ancestors that they were the
Right.
enslaved. And that brings me to the topic of people nowadays. I really don't understand that are against like history or destroying. They're trying to whitewash history, trying to get
Right. They
rid
kind
of.
of,
They get all gung ho that my ancestors were enslaved, Well, if they were to do their research, they would find out that their ancestors was enslavers too.
right.
All we could do is learn from the past and not repeat it. But what's done is done.
I tell the people here when I came across a lot of people in northern Mexico with the last names of the founders, who honestly they believed that they were still 100% Spanish. And I said it's pretty hard to be 100% Spanish. For the last 300-400 years, it's been a mixing pot up here in the north. Even though for the first couple of 100 years, it was a lot of intermarriage to avoid that mixture. But sooner or later, they all. I used to tell them, "You're all going to find that little raisin in that bowl of rice." So be prepared, and they get upset.
I was watching this movie called oh man, Que lindo es Mexico. It's a new movie that's on Netflix. And so this guy goes back to the town. He hadn't been there like for like 20 years. Goes back with the wife and the family, and then the uncle sees the wife y le dice, ay, mira, tan güerita, tan bonita. Muy bien hecho, mijo. Estás mejorando la raza. So when he said
Right.
that, man, I just started laughing. Um, anyways, but that's a viewpoint that a lot of, well, that's a racist point.
It is. It is. It really is. But that's how this whole country started. I mean, they would rather marry their own cousin or their niece or nephew than to marry outside of that or wait or they all had affairs, but they didn't give them their names. But they would rather intermarry than to go outside the loop when there was no other choice. And that was because of the racists.
Something I'm doing right now, I'm going through the death records of Monterrey, the first microfilm, and I'm going entry by entry. Something that I noticed, this is not even related to DNA, but you mentioned that, and I remembered. I found a lot of children that were abandoned in the front of the church.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
but what was surprising to me was that only like about 1/3 of them were alive. Like I guess the baby would die and they would just abandon him in front of the church. I don't know if it was so the church could bury them.
There were probably also bastard children, unfortunately, and that's why they left them there to avoid the shame and the guilt of the whole town turning against you.
And another thing, did the children die while waiting for the priest to find them there? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
something
yeah.
else. Like, because we have these heats right now that's super hot. Imagine a baby being left, let's say at 9 p.m. and then they don't find him until the next morning. Does he get dehydrated within that time?
Or freeze to death. Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And the ones that survived, that's where you get a lot of the real religious last names. They were the of the church. As a matter of fact, they would say, ese niño es de la iglesia. That child is from the church. So his last name was Iglesia.
Yeah, and I found a lot of them. The babies were getting, I guess, buried, and it would say Juan, hijo de la iglesia.
Yeah,
You know, but well, it's kind of sad.
it is sad.
Back to DNA. We already talked about being adopted, some endogamy. Oh, we do have Jewish DNA in northeastern Mexico.
Absolutely.
And as we mentioned before, and Don Israel Cavazos Garza used to say, paper-wise, in Nuevo León, there's no Jewish people. But when it comes to our foods, our traditions, we do have Jewish people. And he makes a point. If they find a document with you that says you're Jewish, that could mean that you were gonna be executed for being a heretic. So it was very dangerous.
The secrecy, exactly. To this date in Spain, people who were descendants of Sephardic Jews still deny that they ever had Jewish blood in them. I mean, just recently, when they started doing the citizenship of Spain, if you had Jewish blood, a lot of people all of a sudden, realized that they had some Jewish blood in them. But prior to that, they denied it because Carlos Gonzalez, that did the book on Carvajal, he went for years and stayed 3 to 4 months every year, chronicling the history of Carvajal and his family and how and where they lived and how they came to the New Spain. And when he went to talk to people, and they denied that they had Jewish blood. And when they found out that he was okay, they started to give him information about their family. Some of them gave them books that were hundreds of years old to get information on the Sephardic Jews of Spain. So yeah, interesting. The denials, and the Inquisition scared everybody. The Inquisition lasted until the 1800s, so that's pretty scary.
And you know what's crazy about northeastern Mexico? The ones in charge of the Inquisition and the priests, eventually they were all descendants of the first settlers of Nuevo León.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add about DNA?
One thing that, like you mentioned, you touched on the topic of the sales and the special deals that they give once in a while. The other thing that I've asked people to do here is to get their brothers to pitch in. And here in Mexico, it's a lot harder to get those kits that in the States are so easy to get. They don't announce them here. People don't even have the foggiest idea of what a DNA kit is. And when they do find out, they get spooked because they're, $100 for a basic one, and all the way up to, a couple $100 or more on the more points of 23andMe or something like that. So I said to them, how many brothers are you? We're 4, we're 5, we're 6, or whatever. And we divide it, and I tell them, pitch in. And when you're pitching in for that, pitch in for the Federal Express charge that they're going to charge you as well, because that's an additional cost for people here in Mexico.
Yeah, and if you
pitch in.
And if you live in the U.S., you could even find the DNA kits on Amazon. And if you have Amazon Prime, well, you get the free delivery, and 2 days you have it in your house. And
that we don't have that here.
And before we leave, I want to remind everybody the 6th Weird Cousins Virtual Genealogy Conference is coming up. And we are going to have a very interesting presentation by Wesley Johnston. And it's titled Reconstructing Mama Pepa's DNA. So that's going to be a very interesting presentation where Mama Pepa didn't test, but through using the DNA of her descendants, they were able to reconstruct her DNA. So that's going to be very interesting. So guess what? If your father or mother has already passed away, you didn't test their DNA, there's still hope, and there's still a way to reconstruct their DNA using the DNA of the descendants. So
very true.
And the conference will be September 21st to the 22nd. Wellester's already registered. I'm already registered. And I hope to see you all there. This year we're going to have 12 presenters, 13 presenters with our keynote speaker.
Excellent.
So with nothing else, thank you all for listening again to me and Wellester.
Thank you kindly.
Hopefully next month we'll get to do another one.
Sounds good to me. All right, everybody take care.
And that's it for our podcast. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. And also, I want to thank Las Villas del Norte once again for sponsoring this show. And encourage you to go visit Las Villas del Norte at lasvillasdelnorte.com. Remember, Las Villas del Norte provides the same benefits that a genealogical society does, but on a digital platform. They have newsletters, monthly video presentations, and a lot of other great stuff. Please go ahead and visit them. And thank you. Until the next time. Thank you for listening to the Weird Cousins podcast, a podcast dedicated to South Texas and Northeastern Mexico genealogy.